What's the one thing that you would change in the world today to make our world better? I would say let's balance the hyper-masculinity with more femininity.
Welcome back to the second episode in our series Joy to the World with Mo Gawdat. And today we're gonna talk about the feminine energy. Now Mo, when we spoke before, we sat down and you talked about hyper-masculinity in the world. What do you mean by that?
I think it's important to start by defining what is masculinity and what is femininity, because I think that concept is really misunderstood. At a point in time, we started by associating those with biological parts, right? It's like there is a man and that's masculine and there is a woman and that's feminine. And that's absolutely not true at all, okay? Feminine and masculine are qualities, they're traits. They are the way through which we deal with life. You can take a problem and try to solve it in a linear thinking way. That's the masculine way. Or you can try to sort of connect to being itself and try to find intuition, a gut feeling, and that's the feminine way, right? And those qualities are available in every single one of us. Man, woman, straight, gay, whatever gender identification you decide, however you feel like identifying with, you still have a bit of masculine and a bit of feminine.
So it's basically the build-up of the energy of the world, right?
It really is the only way the world can exist. The world can only exist when there is the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
Those two opposites together, they connect to create each of us,
yes.
And then we all together create the whole of us. Now, when you see it as qualities, you start to realize where we went wrong. We went wrong by prioritizing some of those qualities which statistically are associated with the male of the species. So basically, strength, for example, as a quality is a masculine trait, and it's associated more with the masculine because it will appear more frequently and it will be more intense in its presence on the masculine side. Now, you take that as an approach to life, and strength is good. Strength is what kept us as a species protected when we needed strength to fight against, threats out there. Overdoing strength becomes aggressive, okay? So overdoing a quality on the masculine side becomes wrong. Overdoing linear thinking, a masculine trait, becomes stubborn. Doing analytical thinking blinds your mind to possibilities that you can only get through intuitions.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Go to the other side. The opposite of these would be, say, for example, intuition is a very feminine quality. Overdue intuition, and you start to be a little irrational, right? You overdo. Part of one of the most amazing feminine qualities is empathy. Overdo this, and you start to feel too much of the negativity of the world, and so on. Too much of anything is bad. And if you ask me, what's the one thing that you would change in the world today to make our world better? I would say let's balance the hyper-masculinity with more femininity. Why? Because most of the decisions we do in the modern world, because we want more profits and we want more achievements and we want more
success.
Doing and to achieve success, doing is the masculine, being is the feminine. Because we want more doing, we end up in a place where we prioritize the masculine. We have too much masculinity, even in the feminine ones of us, when we show up at work, when we show up in relationships, when we show up in anything that we do. The idea of our world today is we always use a masculine approach to do almost everything. If the other guy annoys us, then what do? We use aggression, we use strength, we fight against them, we have competitiveness, and so on and so forth. If you take the feminine way, if someone differs with us, we may be able to have compassion, understand how they feel, understand their situation. We may be able to communicate. The feminine will nurture rather than destroy and break, and so on and so forth. And so the idea here is what? In a world that becomes hyper-masculine, two things happen. One is we don't live true to ourselves. That's, by the way, men and women.
Yeah.
Because none of us is showing enough of their feminine, including the men, and most importantly, the women. When we go to the workplace, where, again, statistically, there is more correlation with the feminine for the female of the species. But when we go to work, what do? We end up prioritizing the masculine because it's the way to rise in the corporate ladder. One of the things I totally love about rituals, and I told you this before, is how the mix in the team, how the feminine is allowed to show. Okay? And you can feel it in the way the organization works. You can feel it in the impact that you can have. Now, how do we balance this? Am I saying we should just show more femininity? Of course, yes, I am. But we should show the femininity of each of us. Each of us has to dig deep and say, to me, that doesn't feel normal. Okay? To me, to be in the corporate space or in my relationship or in my interactions with my parents or whatever, all of that conditioning that told me I have to do and I have to be, strong and I have to be all of those things, those characters, if they're not you, then once again, like the, soulful living, we have to go back and reflect and say, who is me? What is my truth? Who am I? Why do some traits
get
feel
exaggerated? Maybe.
And they feel unnatural to me, but there are other traits where I feel I'm at home. I feel that I can perform them and go through life with them.
How would you know if you lean more towards the feminine or the masculine energy? Because it's not something you can measure, right?
Actually, interestingly, it is. Yeah. So one of my next books is all about that. I call it Her, and it's all about the idea that you can actually measure the presence of those qualities in you.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, because so think about it this way. I personally am almost in the center. I have enough femininity and enough masculinity. I'm a man, but that doesn't mean I'm masculine. Okay.
No.
Well, the most interesting thing in that analysis, by the way, is that some of the most impactful men that have ever affected our planet are more feminine than masculine. Think about Gandhi. We spoke about Gandhi in the last episode. Non-violent resistance, empathy, all of those traits are what made Gandhi. And they're feminine. The ability to communicate so openly, the ability to relate that to the oneness of the universe. That oneness of the being is such a beautiful feminine quality. And only the feminine would say, oh, but my enemy, I can understand them too, right? More interestingly, Steve Jobs, in my view, who was seen to be that obnoxious, pushy, masculine leader.
Absolutely. Yeah.
His success was more because of his feminine qualities, not his masculine qualities. His success was because of creativity, a beautiful feminine quality, because of his appreciation for beauty, beautiful feminine quality, because of his empathy to his users' needs, and so on. Okay? Now, when you start to see that, you start to see the value of that feminine, the value that this brings to our world. Now, your question was, so how do I find it within me? Okay?
Yes.
How do I find that within me is literally by feeling when things are difficult for you, and if you do them in a certain way, and feeling if they're easy for you when you do them in a different way. Okay? So you take any problem that approaches you. If you feel that analytical thinking is the way that you normally do this and it works really well for you, then analytical thinking on the masculine side is your trait.
Exactly.
Okay? Yeah. But if you feel that you want to trust your gut feeling or you want to be creative in the solution and that you do better this way, then the feminine is your strength. There are 3 stages. Stage 1 is, which is where we are right now, which is to say ignore the feminine altogether. Okay? Sometimes that's sadly the case in so many places and so many situations in our life. Stage 2 is, yes, have a few learned traits that do not comply to your nature, but embrace your nature fully and realize that these are learned traits. And the third is complement yourself with the right partner. Okay? So every successful, business I ever started, it succeeded because I started it with someone that had the things I didn't have. Okay, you know, every successful friendship that I ever had, it was because that person was a mirror that had included a few things that I couldn't naturally produce myself. Every good conversation you've ever had was because you managed to bring a few points of view and respect the other point of view that's brought by another, and then we have a complete picture.
What would more femininity give to the world? Or to society, or to humanity even, for that matter? It's all the same?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. Femininity is life-giving. Do you understand that? Huh?
Yeah.
Life is given by the feminine.
Yeah.
And the view of the feminine of the world is much more holistic through intuition, much more inclusive in terms of that oneness with all being, and much more empathetic, connected in so many ways. Okay? The challenge we have in the world is that we are so good at doing, but we're doing a lot of wrong things.
I would almost say it's the feminine is the feeling and the creation, and the masculine is the action and the doing, right?
Yes.
I think it's all about balance, but it's also about, we speak about the balance of body, mind and soul in the art of soulful living. I think this is about balancing your feminine and your masculine. Sometimes you need a little more masculine, sometimes you need a little more feminine. But I think the most important part is that it will add up to well-being.
Absolutely. So the one thing, I mean, it's not a brainer. Huh? If we want to open up for joy to the planet, joy to the whole world, joy to all of us, okay, a bit more feminine will go a very, very long way.
Well, lovely said. Thank you so much. In our next episode, we're gonna talk about negativity and how to overcome that. Tune in for the next one. Joy to the World with Mo Gawdat. Thank you.